The films did a magnificent job adapting the 7 Harry Potter novels to the big screen, but when you have a series as complicated and as long as Harry Potter, there are a lot of things that you have to cut out. This includes characters, some of their story arcs just not fitting into the highly cut down scripts. In this video, I'm going to go through the life of 21 Harry Potter characters that were not in the movies, and explain their story and how they fit into the original novels. For this list, they can be cast, but if they have no lines, then that's fair game. Obviously, there are going to be spoilers, so spoiler alert. Now, let's get started. Luka Bagman. Luka Bagman was introduced in The Goblet of Fire. He was a former Quidditch star who was not the brightest of the bunch. After his career, he joined the Ministry of Magic and was the head of the Department of Magical Games and Sports. He was known for being washed up and having a bad gambling problem, even betting and losing with Fred and George on the outcome of the 1994 Quidditch World Cup. When he lost, Fred and George harassed him, demanding their money. He also bet on Harry for the Triwizard Tournament and cheated by offering Harry a lot of help to ensure that he would win. Later, he was also cornered and stripped of everything that he had by goblins, who he tried to outsmart after losing a bet with them. His actions here would actually lead to the goblins not taking a side in the Second Wizarding War, as they had had enough of wizards like Bagman. Bagman also had somewhat of a tarnished reputation after he stupidly gave ministry information to the Death Eater Augustus Rookwood during the First Wizarding War. Barty Crouch tried to get him locked up for this, and he was put on trial, but in large part to his former Quidditch career, he was cleared of all charges to the annoyance of Crouch. Although, it was the right decision, because he was never accused of being aligned with Death Eaters ever again. Everyone just chalked it up to him being an idiot, who fell for Rookwood's manipulation. Andromeda and Ted Tonks. Andromeda and Ted are the parents of Nymphadora Tonks. Andromeda is also the sister of Bellatrix Lestrange and Narcissa Malfoy, Draco's mother, the 3 of them making up the Black family sisters. She went down a very different path than her sisters and her entire pureblood family, who are known for being dark wizards. She stayed away from the Death Eater lifestyle and went on to marry Ted, who was a Muggleborn, breaking the Black family pureblood line. Because of this, she was disowned by her family, and they even marked her face out on the Black family tree. When the Second Wizarding War started, Ted and Andromeda did not join the Order of the Phoenix, but they did offer up their home to be one of the safe houses when the Order was transporting Harry from the Dursleys. This ended up going terribly wrong when the Death Eaters knew of the Order's plans and ambushed them. The couple became very worried about the safety of their daughter, but luckily she was okay. As the war moved forward, Ted Tonks was forced to go on the run due to him being a Muggleborn, especially with Umbridge's Muggleborn Registration Act, which accused Muggleborns of stealing their magic from real witches and wizards. While on the run, Ted was unfortunately killed by a group of Snatchers, leaving Andromeda to be a widow. Pierce Pocus. Pierce Pocus was one of Dudley's best friends. Technically, he might have been in the Order of the Phoenix film as one of the boys behind Dudley, but that is in no way confirmed. He was first introduced in The Philosopher's Stone, and was the friend that Dudley decided to bring to the zoo on his birthday. In the film, he was of course written out for the scene, and it makes sense as he did not play a big part in the scene and wasn't really necessary or vital to the story. In the books, however, it wasn't just Dudley that fell through the glass when Harry made it disappear, but Pierce fell in as well. To be honest, I think cutting him out of that part and having only Dudley fall in made that scene more dramatic. So, it doesn't happen often, but I think the film actually did that part better than the book. Zacariah Smith. Zacariah Smith was first introduced in the Order of the Phoenix, and although he was skeptical about Harry and his whole story about Voldemort returning, he was one of the first members to join Dumbledore's army. During the first meeting in the Hog's Head, he continued to question Harry about that night, which was the original reason why he joined, to find out more about Cedric's death.
I'm not going to talk about Cedric, so if that's why you're here, you might as well clear out now.
But he stopped when Fred and George threatened to hit him. Eventually, however, he became an active member in the club and was eager to learn more from Harry, especially after he found out that 10 Death Eaters escaped from Azkaban. In the books, he continued to be a character that wasn't likable to the main heroes, and of course to the readers as well. He made fun of Harry when he thought that he was taking remedial potions with Snape, though he was actually taking occlumency lessons. He also badmouthed Gryffindor when announcing their Quidditch match, and he did not help defend the school during the Battle of Hogwarts. Ginny got a few good shots in on him, however, once hitting him with a powerful Bat Bogey hex on the train, and another time crashing into him while he was announcing the Quidditch match. Bane. In the films, we met Firenze. We did not, however, meet Bane, another centaur who lived in the Forbidden Forest. He was all black and was much more wild than Firenze, frequently getting mad at wizards. In the films, we saw Firenze meet Harry during the events of the Philosopher's Stone, but the back half of that scene was cut off. In the books, Bane became angry with Firenze for warning Harry about Voldemort coming back after he and Bane had read the night sky to tell the future. Bane got mad at him for trying to change the fate that they had seen, and later for carrying Harry on his back, questioning Firenze if he was a common mule. Bane was also one of the many centaurs that carried Umbridge away during the events of the Order of the Phoenix.
What are you doing? I am Senior Undersecretary Dolores Jane Umbridge.
During the Battle of Hogwarts, Hagrid, holding Harry's supposed dead body, called him a coward for not helping in the fight. This made Bane lead the Centaurs into battle, and they broke through the Death Eater's ranks in the Great Hall, turning the advantage of the fight to the heroes. Marietta Edgecombe. Marietta Edgecombe was first introduced in the Order of the Phoenix and is one of the few friends that stuck by Cho Chang after her boyfriend Cedric Diggory was murdered. She joined Dumbledore's army with Cho when Cho was too nervous to go alone, but she turned out to be the downfall of the club. Being nervous about her mother losing her job at the ministry, she ratted out the club to Umbridge herself. What she did not know was that when she signed the list to join Dumbledore's army, Hermione had put a jinx on it. When she ratted out the club, the jinx kicked in and caused her to have the word sneak written across her face in pimples. No one was able to get rid of the jinx, even Madame Pomfrey failing to do so. In my opinion, I wish that they had included her in the films, because in the film, Cho was of course the one who took the blame for ratting out the club, basically spitting on her character, which I never liked. And they of course cleared her name, saying that Umbridge used truth serum on her.
Have you brought the Veritaserum?
I'm afraid you've used up all my stores interrogating students, the last of it on Miss Chen.
But it still just feels as though they did her character dirty. I also think it's really funny that no one was able to remove the jinx, forcing her to return to Hogwarts for her 7th year, still having the pimples on her face. And I know this video is based on the books, but I'm just going to add that after the series ended, Rowling confirmed that the pimples eventually faded, but it left a few scars. Dennis Creevy. In the films, we met Colin Creevy, though he was greatly underused and had no development past the first film that he was in. But that aside, we never met his younger brother Dennis, who might be one of the funniest characters in the series. He was introduced in the Goblet of Fire when he started his Hogwarts career, and his first night there, while crossing the lake with Hagrid as all first years do, he fell into the lake and was saved by a creature that he thought to be the giant squid. Later, when he got into the Great Hall, little tiny Dennis was wearing Hagrid's gigantic moleskin coat, and he mouthed to his brother while giving him the thumbs up that he fell into the lake. When the support Cedric Diggory and Potter Stink badges were passed around, Dennis and his brother tried to change it to support Harry Potter, but all they managed to do was get it stuck on Potter Stinks, and later they accidentally made it say Potter Really Stinks. Dennis was later a part of Dumbledore's army, and as a second year, he was able to sneak out of the castle and go to Hogsmeade for the first meeting in the Hog's Head, as only 3rd years and up can visit the village. After Dumbledore was killed, Dennis along with his brother Colin were pulled out of school by their father because it was too dangerous for Muggleborns to be there. The family later had to go on the run, and at the end of the war, we all know that Dennis lost his brother Colin during the Battle of Hogwarts. Hebibus Smith. In the films, we saw a few flashbacks to Tom Riddle's past when Dumbledore showed Harry some memories that he had collected, but they left a few memories out, one of them involving Hebibus Smith. She's fascinating because it gives Voldemort some great character development. Hepzibah was a very old and a very wealthy witch who was a descendant of Helga Hufflepuff, one of the 4 founders of Hogwarts. She was extremely attracted to the young Tom Riddle, who charmed her, kissing her hand and bringing her flowers, but all in a very manipulative way. One day, when Tom was visiting her, she showed him her 2 most prized possessions, Hufflepuff's cup and Salazar Slytherin's locket. When she pulled them out, her smile faded when she saw Tom's eyes suddenly turn red and gleam with greed. Her foolish smile and obsessive admiration of the boy momentarily faltered, and showing him these 2 objects would ultimately lead to her death when Tom came back 2 days later to kill her and to take the 2 items. After her death, Tom got away with the murder, and the blame instead went to her very old house elf Hoki when Riddle modified the house elf's memory to make her confess to accidentally poisoning her master. Teddy Lupin. I discussed Andromeda and Ted Tonks, and now let's talk about their grandson, who was also cut from the films, Teddy Lupin, the son of Nymphadora Tonks and Remus Lupin. He was briefly mentioned in the Deathly Hallows, once in part 1,
Wait till you hear the news. Remus and I.
Once in part 2,
And Remus, your son.
Others will tell him what his mother and father died for. One day, he'll understand.
and once in a deleted scene.
You shouldn't have. It's Teddy who needs you.
He'll sleep till dawn and snore like his father. It's you that needs me tonight.
In the books, he played a big part in the epilogue 19 years later. Obviously, he lost both of his parents in the Battle of Hogwarts and was an orphan, but we learn that he was raised by his grandmother Andromeda and had a lot of help from his godfather, Harry. He was born a metamorph magus just like his mother Nymphadora, meaning that he was able to change his appearance at will. When he was born, he had black hair, which then turned to ginger, and later to turquoise. In the epilogue, he's seen kissing Victor Weasley, the daughter of Bill and Fleur at King's Cross, seeing her off to school. The two were in a relationship, Rita Skeeter writing that they kissed very often, so much in fact that they had their own section in Rita's article. To be honest, I wish that we could have seen more of Teddy, but instead we got this pile of garbage.
Excuse me, I have to go and vomit.
Pease the Poltergeist. Pease is a poltergeist that lives in Hogwarts Castle, and is the ultimate troublemaker who lives to torment Argus Filch, the Hogwarts caretaker. He was actually cast in the films, and they even shot a few scenes for the first movie, but director Chris Columbus wasn't happy with the CGI, and cut the scenes not only from the film, but from the deleted scenes as well. Let's go through and talk about the trouble that he made over the course of Harry's time at Hogwarts. He alerted Filch to them being out of bed the night that they saw Fluffy, made Moaning Myrtle cry, saying that Hermione was gossiping about her, loudly announced to the whole school that Harry opened the Chamber of Secrets, refused to remove the gum that he put in the lock of a door, only to have Lupin shoot it into his nose, dropped water balloons on kids as they entered the Great Hall at the start of term, caused havoc in the kitchens where the house elves worked after being told he was not allowed at the start of term feast, hid in a suit of armor and sang rude songs during the Yule Ball, encouraged Dobby and Creature to fight while floating over them and throwing chalk at them to make them more mad, locked the Gryffindor common room, and did not let anyone enter unless they set fire to their pants. Neville was the only one that fell for this, and during the Battle of Hogwarts, he caused chaos among the Death Eaters, eager to protect the castle. But the best thing that he ever did was take Fred and George's words to heart when they said to give Umbridge hell for them, and he went on a rampage, juggling burning torches over students, dumping a bag of tarantulas into the Great Hall, locked Mrs. Norris in a suit of armor, and destroyed property like never before, and finally, running after Umbridge, hitting her with a walking stick as she fled the school. There was always one person that could keep him in line, however, the Bloody Baron, another Hogwarts ghost who Peeves was terrified of. It would have been great to see him in the films, and probably would have made for some great comic relief, which a few of the films desperately needed. Frank and Alice Longbottom. Frank and Alice Longbottom are the parents of Neville Longbottom, and though they made an appearance on the picture that showed the first group that made up the Order of the Phoenix.
Frank and Alice Longbottom.
Neville's parents.
They suffered a fate worse than death, you ask me.
They had no lines, and the chapter where we actually met them was cut from the film. The two were both Aurors, or Dark Wizard Catchers, and as I said, both were part of the Order of the Phoenix. After Voldemort had fallen, Death Eaters tortured them endlessly, trying to find out where their fallen master had gone. They were put through so much torturing and so much pain that they were driven into insanity, unable to remember past memories or grasp new ones, essentially making them just brainless bodies walking around. In the books, we saw Neville interact with his parents, specifically his mother, who gave him an empty gum wrapper, something that Neville cherished, which is heartbreaking. Alice and Frank were made tragic heroes who gave their lives in the most wasteful way, forever making Neville be raised by his grandmother and without a mom and dad. I wish that the films had incorporated the scene where Neville saw them in St. Mungo's, because I think it's one of the most important parts of his character development in the books. Winky. Winky was the second house elf that we were introduced to, Dobby being the first, and when Harry first met her, he actually mistakenly thought it was Dobby. She was introduced in the 4th book, The Goblet of Fire, and was the house elf of the Crouch family. She was wrongly accused of using Harry's wand to put the dark mark in the sky after the Quidditch World Cup, but it was really Barty Crouch Jr., the Crouch's son. Winky took the blame for it because Barty Jr. was supposed to be dead. Years before this, a locked up Barty Jr. and his dying mother switched places, and his mother took his place in Azkaban. Because she disguised herself as her son, when she died, everyone thought that Barty Jr. died. He, however, was still alive, but was locked in his house, never allowed to leave, and was under the watchful eye of Winky. After the scandal of Winky forging the Dark Mark, Barty Crouch Sr. was forced to fire her. Winky fell into a deep depression and drank her troubles away, despite the fact that her friend Dobby had gotten her a job in the Hogwarts kitchens. Much to the other Hogwarts house elves' disgust, she sat in the kitchen drinking and crying all day, refusing to work, still deeply attached to the family that let her go. Dobby was the only elf that cared for her, and would often put her in a bed that he found in the room of requirement. Over the years, she got better and started working, but still had a serious drinking problem. She joined Kreacher and the other house elves in the Battle of Hogwarts, storming in as a house elf army that went after the invading forces of the castle. After the battle, Winky eventually stopped drinking and continued to work in the Hogwarts kitchens, though she never truly got over the loss of her former family. Professor Cuthbert Binns. Professor Binns is a Hogwarts ghost who teaches history of magic and is perhaps the most boring person to ever live or die. Many say that one day he fell asleep in the staff room, and when he got up to teach the next morning, he left his body behind without even realizing. Binns showed up to every class, not noticing the students nor caring. All he did was get up and teach in the most monotone and painfully boring voice, making even the most interesting topics very dull. Despite that, however, he had one of the most important roles for the story to move forward in the Chamber of Secrets, explaining to the class about the Chamber and about the 4 founders of Hogwarts, as well as the beef that the 3 had with Slytherin. In the films, however, the role of explaining this was replaced by Professor McGonagall.
Now, according to legend, Slytherin had built a hidden chamber in this castle known as the Chamber of Secrets.
Rodolphus and Rebastion Lestrange. Rodolphus and Rebastion were brothers who were among Voldemort's most loyal followers. Rodolphus ended up marrying Bellatrix Lestrange, and Rebastion, Rodolphus, Bellatrix, and Barty Crouch Jr. were the ones who tortured Frank and Alice Longbottom into madness. Afterward, they were all put on trial for their crime and were all sentenced to life in Azkaban. However, when Voldemort returned, he ensured their escape. After that, the brothers were both involved in the Battle of the Department of Mysteries, where they were led by Lucius Malfoy to get the prophecy. When the Death Eaters split up, Rodolphus went with his wife Bellatrix, and they went after Luna and Ginny in the Space Chamber, while Rebastion pursued Harry, Hermione, and Neville. During the battle, both were eventually caught and sent back to Azkaban, but they were freed not too long after that, when Voldemort started infiltrating the Ministry, and was able to pull the strings to release his followers that were currently locked up. Rodolphus went on to participate in the Battle of the Seven Potters, this time going after Nymphadora Tonks and Ron Weasley, though Ron was disguised as Harry. Tonks ended up getting the upper hand on Rodolphus, injuring him badly. Both brothers fought in the Battle of Hogwarts, where they were both defeated and brought to justice, this time with no escape from Azkaban. Merope, Morphin, and Marvolo Gaunt. Merope, Morphin, and Marvolo make up the Gaunt family, who were descendants of Salazar Slytherin, who, as I said earlier, is one of the 4 founders of Hogwarts. This was another flashback cut from the Half-Blood Prince film, and this one is actually one of my favorite parts of the whole series. Marvolo was the father of Morphin and Merope, and he and Morphin were extremely cruel to Merope, who would later become the mother of Lord Voldemort. Merope was in love with the Muggle boy who lived in the mansion down the street, Tom Riddle Sr. When Morphin realized this, he shot a spell at the boy, which led to the Ministry intervening. Morphin and Marvolo tried to fight them off, but the duel ended in them losing. The two were taken to Azkaban, Morphin for 3 years, and Marvolo for 6 months. Merope took this chance to leave the family that physically and mentally abused her, and went to pursue a relationship with Tom Riddle Sr. He, however, did not like her, so she used a love potion, leading to the two getting married, and Merope getting pregnant with their child. Merope became hopeful that Tom would love her even without the love potion, but when she stopped giving it to him, Tom left forever, and a desperate Merope went to an orphanage right before going into labor. She gave birth to Tom Riddle Jr. and died 1 hour later. When Marvolo was released from Azkaban, his shock of Merope's desertion led to his early death. When Morphin was released 2.5 years later, his sister was gone, though he did not know that she was dead, and his father was dead as well. Morphin remained in the Gaunt family house for many years, until one day, Voldemort came to visit him. Morphin, thinking that he was Tom Riddle Sr., who his sister had run off with, tried to attack him, but when he realized that he wasn't, he told Voldemort about Tom Riddle Sr. This made Voldemort kill his father and his father's new family, and modify the memory of Morphin to make him admit to the murders. Morphin spent the rest of his life in prison for a crime that he did not commit. Many years later, Dumbledore put all of this together and tried to get Morphin released, but before he could, Morphin died in Azkaban. Charlie Weasley. To this day, I'm still shocked that they didn't incorporate Charlie Weasley in the 8 films, and I feel like it was a huge betrayal to the Weasley family. He did have a very brief cameo in The Prisoner of Azkaban when the family was featured in the paper for their trip to Egypt, but it's not even touched upon. He also got a few throwaway mentions, once in the Philosopher's Stone.
My brother Charlie works with these in Romania.
But again, he never had a true appearance. In the books, he was first introduced in the Goblet of Fire, although he and Ron did send letters back and forth during the Philosopher's Stone when they were smuggling Norbert, Hagrid's dragon, out. His true first introduction, though, was when Harry went to the Weasleys before the Quidditch World Cup and met both Bill and Charlie for the first time. Charlie was present during the Quidditch World Cup, and when the Death Eaters made an appearance, tormenting the Muggle local landowner and his family. He, along with his father, Bill, and Percy, went to help calm the situation. He was also one of the dragon experts who brought the 4 dragons to Hogwarts for the Triwizard Tournament. When Harry beat the Hungarian Horntail, he congratulated him, and later he attempted to get off of work to join Bill and Molly Weasley to support Harry for the 3rd task, but he was unable to. Charlie also joined the Order of the Phoenix, and was told by Dumbledore to stay in Romania to recruit foreign wizards to the cause. Charlie returned home for Bill and Fleur's wedding, and was Bill's best man. While back at home, he told Hagrid that Norbert was doing well, and was now called Norberta, since they had discovered, to Hagrid's surprise, that the dragon was actually a female. Charlie did not arrive to the battle with everyone else, but when he did, he arrived leading an army of Hogsmeade residents and friends and family members of those children that decided to stay and fight. Charlie and his reinforcements changed the tide in the battle in favor of the heroes. Arriving late, he did not find out about his brother Fred's death until after the battle, and he along with the rest of his family were devastated. It's unfortunate that these characters were never featured in the films and never got their time in the spotlight, but now with this tribute to these 21 characters, hopefully I gave them justice. Thanks so much for watching, guys. You can follow me on social media. Links for that will be in the description. And I want to give a huge shout out to all my patrons listed below. If you want to be listed on my next video, plus a bunch of other rewards, check out my Patreon, which is linked down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you press that subscribe button to help grow the channel. Again, thank you so much for watching, and look out for more great videos on the way.